We interrupt this record to bring you a special bulletin. The reports of a flying saucer hovering over the city have been confirmed.
Did you really go out with an alien? Uh-huh. What was it like? Real different.
Becoming Human, a Mork and Mindy podcast. Hello, listeners. This is Paula Schaffner with episode 75. My dad can't beat up anybody, which is not only one of the full sentence titles of the series, but it doesn't contain any proper names. This episode first aired on November 12th, 1981. The IMDb synopsis is, Mork pretends to be a superhero for Mearth's sake. This was the second of 4 Mork Mindy episodes directed by Frank Buxton, and it was the 13th written by Dale McRaven and the 11th by Bruce Johnson. This is their last writing credit for the series, but they probably had some behind-the-scenes input since they were also producers. There's a nighttime exterior of the house. Mork enters humming the Superman theme. He and Mearth have their jackets over their heads, with the rest hanging behind them like capes. They fly around the living room. The applause includes whistles. Mindy enters last, shuts the door, and looks amused, but she puts her hands on her hips. She says it's been 2.5 hours since they saw Superman, so I don't know what they were doing in the meantime. She says it's about time that you guys come in for a landing, so presumably they've been pretending to fly all over Boulder. Mearth says she can join them. Just because she's a girl, they won't make fun of her. He says she can fly just like they can. Mork agrees, and he gives examples of women who can fly. Tinkerbell, obvious. Grace Slick, I wasn't sure if that was a drug reference, and Amelia Earhart. He says Amelia may still be up there, but her luggage always arrived. And I don't know if that's the first Amelia Earhart reference on the series, but she was definitely still a big part of pop culture references. Laverne and Shirley around that same time also has a reference to her, although she had disappeared back in the 30s. Mindy says even the Wright brothers came down for milk and cookies. She goes in the kitchen. She asks Mearth if he liked his first movie. He sits on a bar stool as Mindy putters around the kitchen and Mork hangs up their jackets. He said he did enjoy the movies, and I think he doesn't mean that they saw more than one movie, but just colloquial, you could say, going to the movies, even if it was just one. He's been thinking. As he understands it, Superman has 2 jobs, and he doesn't specify, but one job is superhero, and the other is a reporter. Mork says that that's correct. Mearth says, and Mommy has 1 job. Mork says correct again. Mearth says, and Daddy watches General Hospital. Mork says no comment. General Hospital, I think, was the hot daytime soap of that time. We were still in Luke and Laura mania. Mindy says Daddy's job is watching Mearth. Mearth says not during General Hospital. So the cliche of the homemaker ignoring the kids to watch daytime soaps. Mearth hopes that when he grows up, he'll be just like Superman. Mork thought that Mearth would grow up to be just like him. Mearth asks why, and Mork looks shocked. Mindy says, oh, Mearth. Mork mimes that Mearth stabbed him in the heart, and he says, take it out real slow, son. Like, take out the knife. Mindy comes over and puts an arm around Mork as Mearth stands. She tells Mearth his dad is wonderful. Mork says it's all right, and he'll take over. He tells his son that he himself has lots of wonderful qualities, but all he can come up with is prompt, so he tells Mindy that she can jump in anytime. Mindy says Mearth's father is loving and special and unique, which is all true, but she could point out his intelligence or sense of humor or his singing and dancing and other musical abilities, but that's what she's going with. Mearth says, yeah, but he can't fly. Mork says, just because he can't fly doesn't mean he doesn't have a lot in common with Superman.
He's an alien from the planet Krypton, and does the planet Orc mean anything to you?
Woo! Well, you know, Mearth, I think it's way past your bedtime. So why don't you take your milk and cookies and go upstairs and put on your Dr. Denton?
Okay.
Okay?
Oh, boy. Back up to that fortress of solitude. Boy, I tell you, I'm gonna really plug in that electric blanket tonight and watch Kitty go.
We see Mindy jumping in before Mork can out himself as an alien. Mearth refers to the Fortress of Solitude, which is where Superman first learned about his true identity, heritage, and purpose on Earth. But, of course, in this case, he means the attic. So that clears up the question of whether Mearth was going to continue to sleep in his parents' bedroom. So now he has his own room up in the attic where his dad used to stay. We have implied off-screen abuse of a cat, not for the first time on the series. Mindy says she thought they agreed agreed that they wouldn't tell Mearth Mork is an alien until he gets, she pauses, younger, because of course he's aging backwards. Mork knows that, but Mearth has been talking up that guy in the tights again. Then Mork says even Superman can't do this, and he uses his powers to raise the attic staircase. She scolds him.
I bet he can't do the karaoke.
The what?
But don't get the karaoke.
Well, you don't have to prove anything. I mean, you have your son's respect. Listen, all kids go through a form of hero worship. Believe me, it'll pass.
I guess you're right. But just to be on the safe side, from now on, I'm only going to take him to hear Slim Whitman sing Aida.
This is, again, not a very shippy episode, but we do get them dancing randomly together to the karaoke. She's very in character that she tries to talk common sense to him even when they're dancing. And she's amused when he imitates Slim Whitman singing Aida, so a country singer singing opera. And he was famous for his yodeling abilities and use of falsetto. I think there have been references to Superman on the series before, but it is more central here. And of course, one of Robin Williams' best friends, Christopher Reeve, played Superman in the very popular 1978 movie. Superman 2 came out in June of 1981, so I think that that's the movie that this family has gone to see. Superman 3 wouldn't be released until 1983. I'm guessing that Christopher was probably amused by this episode, and it certainly is done lovingly, but there is a bit of tweaking, like the reference to that guy in tights. There's a fade to Mork Mindy's bedroom. Mindy is in a long white nightgown with matching ballerina-like slippers. There's a brown wood hutch at the foot of the bed, and she's kind of half sitting on that and reclining on the bed as she brushes her hair with one hand and takes notes with a pen in the other. Mork enters from the blue and white bathroom, and he's got his usual nightshirt, but he's wearing a blue towel turban. He asks what she's up to, and she says she's brushing her hair and taking some notes. He's impressed that she can do both at the same time, which is one up on Gerald Ford. This is 4.5 years after Ford left the presidency, but they're still making jokes about his clumsiness. And yeah, I haven't heard Mork make a Nixon reference in a while. Mork asks what the notes are for. He unwraps the turban to reveal that he's got his red and white nightcap on underneath. So it wasn't like he was drying his hair. He just wanted to put this on over his nightcap. Mindy says that Governor Lamb is taking a skiing vacation up in Aspen, and Dewey Fishbeck's going up there to interview him. So they, meaning probably Mr. Sternhagen and maybe Dewey, asked her to write questions for Dewey to ask the governor. I think we may have had a reference to Governor Lamb before. Richard Douglas Lamb was the 38th governor of Colorado from 1975 to 87, and he was a Democrat who was also very active in what Wikipedia calls the Colorado lifestyle, becoming an avid skier, mountain climber, hiker, and member of the Colorado Mountain Club. Affectionate mocking of him, but it was interesting that they actually included a real Colorado politician who I guess would have been known well enough nationally to be referenced like that. I don't remember him. And yes, we get another reference to Dewey Fishbeck, who we heard about, I think, 2 or 3 times in season 3. And as always, he is off screen. We will shortly find out that he is continuing to have mishaps, and we'll find out very soon that he is not too bright. Mork is now sitting on the bed. He asks why Dewey isn't writing his own questions. Mindy says Dewey's the anchor man. Now before, if I remember correctly, Dewey was doing the farming report, but maybe he got promoted. I mean, it's a small station. Mindy says all Dewey knows how to do is joke about the weatherman's sports coat. So that's referring to the stereotype of the airheaded anchorman, like the Ted Baxter character on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Mork stands and says it's time to hit the old sack, and he walks around to the other side of the bed. He could have just rolled over, but for whatever reason, it's directed for him to cross in front of Mindy. She says she's going to have the light on for a few more minutes if that's okay. He tosses the towel onto a magazine stand. He says it's all right with him. He claims he slept through an eclipse. Don't know when, don't know where. He chuckles. But he barely lies down before he jumps up and says he can't sleep. He's got insomnia. He paces and talks about tossing and turning. He says what's wrong is he doesn't have his little guy's respect, meaning Mearth, of course. He sings a bit of the R-E-S-P-E-C-T song. Maybe second time on series, I'm not sure. She's now sitting up, and she caps the pen and says that Mearth is just infatuated with the movie. He's just like Mork was with the midget wrestlers, and I don't know if we've had a reference to midget wrestling before in this series. He says Terry, the teeny terror, didn't have a spit curl and red boots, like Superman. He He walks away from her. To his back, she tells him to forget the movie. He has his son's respect. He turns and says, no, he doesn't, and why should he? She brings home the bacon, and all he does is collect the grease. So the cliche about the money earner bringing home the bacon in a different way than what we've seen in the episodes going back to Mindy and Mork at the tail end of last season, and certainly before that, but definitely a lot lately. This episode is sort of about sex roles, but sort of not. It also ties in with some themes that we've seen since this first season about Mork's self-respect being tied into whether he has a job and what the job is, and also some issues about masculinity and machismo and courage and cowardice and so on, which makes the episode sound a lot more intriguing than it is, but I could definitely at least see the through lines of those themes, deliberate or not, going through the series and taking new turns in this episode because now Mork is a father. Mork walks away again, so Mindy again has to talk to his back. She says he has the biggest responsibility of all, raising a child. He turns again and says Gloria Steinem didn't buy that, and neither does he. Again, spinning on whether being a homemaker is enough, and he is a quote-unquote house husband. So mentions Gloria Steinem, referring to feminism, but with this different twist on it. Gloria Steinem, as far as I know, never actually said anything against motherhood, but there's that stereotype that being a mom just isn't enough. Mork wants his son to look up to him, even though Mearth does have the height advantage, a reference to Jonathan Winters being taller than Robin Williams. Mork thinks he's got to get himself a job, a legitimate job. Again, he's across the room, so she has to talk to his back again, as she tells him that he already has a job. And she doesn't say as Mearth's primary caretaker. She says he's an observer for Orc. Actually, he has 2 jobs, just like Superman. He turns to face her, and she adds that it's like being an ambassador to the entire planet. But Mork wants a job that he can tell everybody about, especially his own son. And he says his own son, Mearth, in case we forgot the names. There's a lot in this episode of people saying each other's names. Mork wants a job he can talk about. Come home, complain about the boss, hang around the water cooler, chat with friends, flirt with his secretary, get drunk at the Christmas party, and make a fool out of himself. Something a son can really respect. This stereotype of a white-collar man's ways of passing time at work, including an implication of infidelity. Mindy, although she can be jealous, just knows that it's part of this whole sequence. She says if Mork's mind is made up, it's fine with her. Nobody brings up the child care issue, because obviously it'd be tricky to have him enroll in the daycare where Mork used to work, and it's never explained why he left there. But maybe they'll have different shifts or something. They'll make it work. She just wants him to realize that it's not that easy to get a good job. And of course, we've seen Mork go through various jobs over the past 3 seasons or so. It is true, it's not easy to get a good job, but I would think he realizes that. He says he's a superior being and he can get any job he wants, ignoring his past work history. Mork in this episode especially swings between extremes of optimism and pessimism. He does admit that if by some fluke of fate he can't get any job he wants, he can always write a diet book. And that is kind of a joke, I think maybe late 70s on into the 80s. The whole trend of diet books being bestsellers really was breaking through. There's a sunny daytime exterior, and we can see snow on the ground. So we've had all these episodes where the flowers were blooming, despite Mindy in one episode referring to making snow angels. So now the air date is mid-November. We are in the snowier part of the Colorado year, but I don't know that that will be consistent, so we'll see what happens next episode. Mindy is packing a tape recorder into a shoulder bag. There are skis by the front door. Mork comes home carrying his jacket and a folded newspaper. They say hi. He hangs up his jacket and calls her Little Boodle Bugger, a new pet name, although we will hear the return of Pooter. At the beginning of this scene, he's putting on false cheer. He's pretending that he's in a good mood, but he's covering up his disappointments. He says, what a day it is outside, huh? Blue, blue, blue sky. Paul Newman blue, like Paul Newman eyes. It stretches all the way to the Flatirons. The Flatirons are a rock formation near Boulder, Colorado. Mork says if John Denver isn't writing a song right now, how he's missing a million seller. Like, it's such a beautiful day that he's going to write the equivalent of Rocky Mountain High. No, I don't know if we've had a John Denver reference before, but it seems like we would have. Mindy takes Mork's free hand in both of hers and asked if he had a good day job hunting. He says the possibilities are infinite. He's narrowed it down to two things: either giving blood every day for the rest of his life, or a job at Remtech as a nocturnal surveillance official. She realizes he means a night watchman. He says that's a generic term. And we did have an episode where he was a night watchman at a museum, and that was the Robbie the Robot episode. He refers to the profit sharing and the pension plan and admits the perks aren't what they should be, but he does get along very well with the Doberman. So in this case, there will be a dog along with him on the surveillance. She says, well, at least he has options. He says it's so good to know that he can expand his knowledge into so many fields and have the ultimate security and confidence to carry on like this. He's now sitting on the couch and he notices a packed suitcase next to him. She says she has to go away for the weekend to Aspen. And so they had set this up in the previous scene that Dewey Fishbeck was going to Aspen. Mork says that's fine. He's about to lose his son's respect for life. And he throws down the newspaper and jumps to his feet. And you're off barrel jumping with Peggy and Rhonda Fleming. We can see that mood swing going. Peggy Fleming was a very famous ice skater, and Rhonda Fleming was a Hollywood actress from the 40s and 50s. She again speaks to his back and says it's a business trip. He says that she's deserting him for business. That makes him feel a lot better. Now he's being sarcastic. He thought it was personal. She comes around to stand in front of him. She tells him that she loves him, so that was nice, and she's not deserting him. She notices Mearth descending the stairs and says they'll talk about it later. Mork takes her hand.
Hi, Mearth.
Oh, son, hello.
Wait a minute, pilgrims. Just stay away from that water hole. It's contaminated, and don't fill your canteens until I tell you.
Look, I think his voice is changing.
Mearth, do you have a frog in your throat?
No. I have John Wayne in my throat, and I have a frog in my pocket.
Jonathan Winters gives a good John Wayne imitation at a time when John Wayne imitations were very common, but it does feel a little bit random in the episode. He mentions that he has a frog in his pocket, and we never see the frog, but he's just carrying this around. Mearth wants to ask his dad something. He was upstairs watching TV and he saw a Western. He wants to know if his dad has ever strung up 12 outlaws single-handedly. Mork says he once stopped a lady in the express lane who had too many items. Mindy says, boy, I bet everybody in the supermarket thanked your daddy. And then Mearth wonders if somebody is going bye-bye. He holds up the shoulder bag. Mindy says she is. Dewey Fishbeck had an allergic reaction to his toupee, and his head is covered in hives, so she has to go to Aspen to interview the governor. So she gives more information than we got earlier. We find out that Dewey Fishbeck lost his hair and has decided to wear a hairpiece, but had this allergic reaction, so again, subject to mishaps off screen. Mearth says that's important. Mork defensively says that Daddy's doing something important. Daddy's making macaroni tonight with cheese. Mindy says, Mearth says it's not nearly as important as what she's doing. Mork says it's American cheese. Mindy says, oh, American cheese, Mearth. So she is doing her best to be supportive, both when she's having one-on-one conversations with Mork and in front of their child, trying to boost Mork up. She says she wishes she could stay here with them and have macaroni. Mork, for some reason, goes into the kitchen. The only thing I could figure is like it made it easier for some of the shots coming up. Mearth calls her mom and tells her to go and see the governor. I thought it was interesting that he actually knows what a governor is. In the previous episode, I talked about how he had moved from infancy into being a toddler. Here, it's like he's a preschooler or maybe even a kindergarten in terms of his perception and his vocabulary and his behavior. I think he stays at that level through the rest of the season, but we'll see. As with real children, it's easier to have lines for older kids. This is why we saw Andy on Family Ties just age. So the soap opera rapid aging syndrome. Connected to soap operas, but it'll pop up on sitcoms as well. Babies and toddlers are very cute, but they're hard to work with. And of course, orphan aging may be completely different anyway. Mearth says incidentally, and there are a few instances in this episode where he's using polysyllabic words. He asks if Mindy thinks she could get the governor's autograph for him. And if she can't, Mearth would just as soon get hers. There's a cut to Mork looking sad. Mindy asks Mearth to help Mommy by taking her skis down the car. There's a lot in this episode with people referring to themselves by titles or third person. He says it'll be an honor and salutes her. Then he turns and exits with the skis. The audience applauds. Mindy says, now Mork, I don't want you to overreact. He's just a child and he's easily impressed. Tomorrow his hero will be Reggie Jackson. Mork says, oh good, another person I can't compete with. At that time, Reggie Jackson was a baseball superstar, and he was then playing for the New York Yankees. That was 77-81, and then in 82 he switched to the California Angels. Mindy really feels like she should stay. Mork says, don't be silly, don't worry. He calls himself the eternal optimist. Yes, sometimes he is, but as you can see, he also gets pessimistic in this episode. And he talks about how life is like a seesaw, where you can be up one moment and then up the next, getting kind of philosophical.
Yellow. Speaking. Remtech Corporation? I scored very high in the IQ test. I had to play dumb. The personnel director liked me? Nothing can stop me now, man. I got it. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you.
You did it, Mork. You did it.
Well, what makes you say that, man?
Well, you just said that the personnel director liked you and you scored highly on the IQ test.
Well, when they put my personality profile through the computer, they found out if they left me alone with the Doberman that he'd bite my head off and bark down my neck. Well, by the time you come back from your trip, our son will have finally disowned me, so you take care and have a nice time.
Mork played dumb, but he still scored high on the IQ test, so this is the thing where he is a superior being, but he has to somewhat hide his intelligence. I think that there was an intelligence test in the pilot. Didn't he do something with like the square pegs and the round holes and he broke it or something? He did well this time, and he also impressed the personnel director, but the computer thinks that the Doberman will bite off his head, even though he was getting along with the Doberman. This is a thing that we've seen a little bit in the series, that computers are being drawn more into American society. They are becoming part of hiring decisions. It's only 1981, but a harbinger of things to come. And we can again see that she is trying to be supportive. So in a way that's kind of shippy, but in this scene we get a very feeble air kiss. This is definitely not a kissing kind of episode. I understand because Mork is stressed out about this aspect of being a parent. He's not feeling affectionate, but it would be nice if we could get them both back on the same page and want to be romantic again. They're sort of like friends who happen to be married and have a child together. There's another daytime exterior of the house, and we get that icicle effect we've seen before. Mindy in voiceover asks Mork to give her a hand. He opens the door for her. He's wearing an apron over one of his usual outfits. My note says she has that god-awful sweater with blue on top, red and green triangles, rest is brown. Remember how I hated that sweater on a couple episodes? It's back. It's so unnecessary. But I guess this is something that she wear coming back from the ski/interview weekend. She's holding her suitcase and she's wearing the shoulder bag. He calls her Little Pooter, so that's a sign that he is feeling more positive and more affectionate that he brought back that pet name. He takes her suitcase and they hug. They say that they missed each other. She tells him not to touch her in a certain spot because she got a bruise. He sets down the suitcase and tries to hug her again, but he touches the same bruise because it goes all the way around. She says everybody was telling her she's a good skier, but Governor Lamb makes Jean-Claude Keely look like a snow bunny. And I think we had a reference to Jean-Claude Keely on the series before, and he was a world-renowned alpine ski racer. And again, they're referring to Governor Lamb's love of the Colorado outdoors and sports. Mork says it sounds like she was skiing over her head. She says she was skiing on her head. I noticed in this episode they give little jokes to Mindy. They're not gut busters, but it's showing that she has a sense of humor, including being able to laugh at herself even when she has, I don't know how serious of an injury. I mean, it's bruising, but she's still able to walk. They sit on the couch, she more carefully, of course. She says the governor suggested that they start out on something called Tammy's Run. She figured, how difficult can it be if it's named Tammy? That was before she found out that it was named after the late Tammy Erickson. You ski right past her headstone. You can't miss it. Mindy didn't. I didn't even bother to look that up. I'm sure this is just a made-up slope for the sake of a joke. He calls her Little Pooter, and he takes off her boots so he can give her a foot massage. So that was nice. That was heading towards shippiness, so we don't get to see much of it. He says compared to him and Mearth, she had a swell time. She asks, what do you mean? Is Mearth all right? Because she's concerned about their child. Mork says yes, he didn't stir fry his toys or anything. He thinks he should start at the beginning so Mindy can understand how this disaster started. She doesn't want to hear about a disaster. He says, okay, Armageddon. We'll find out it's not even really a disaster. It's just could have been worse kind of thing. He says, well, she was off gallivanting with the governor. Mork felt about as useless as a lawnmower on AstroTurf. She doesn't question and say, listen, I was doing my job. Yes, I was skiing, but it wasn't that pleasant, and I was doing this to get an interview. She lets it go. Of course, a lawnmower on the fake grass that would be on sporting fields. He says it was a very crisp, clear day, and it began very innocently with a bowl of fresh fruit and hog jowls. There's a timeline question here, not as bad as in the previous episode, but it makes me wonder what time did she leave if he's talking about a day starting? She tells him to get to the point. He says he was just trying to set the mood, and he observes no wonder the novel is dead as an art form. And that was a thing, maybe starting in the 60s, definitely in the 70s and 80s, where people said the novel is dead. Nobody writes novels. I mean, obviously, people still write novels even now. But as an art form, there was some controversy and disagreement about whether it was still a legitimate art form. But, they still have literary words. It's kind of nonsense, but it was a trendy intellectual topic that he just throws in a reference to. Mork says it all started off as a simple lesson in geography, and then the wheels of catastrophe started to turn. So disaster, catastrophe, Armageddon, really extreme terms. We get a wavy flashback transition, and then we see Mork and Mearth sitting at the dining table. Mork has a book, possibly a textbook, but probably not an atlas open in front of him, because I didn't see any map. And there's also a small globe on the table. Mork wants Mearth to show him a country where it's legal to marry your livestock. This is not going to end well anytime a joke starts out that way. Mearth finds one on the globe, and Mork says, that's right, India. Then, in an Indian accent, he says, if we can't eat them, at least we'll make them part of the family. Why? Who thought that was funny? I mean, there's definitely been some racist and borderline racist jokes on the show, but this was just so unnecessary and unfunny. Why is this here? Mearth doesn't want to play geography anymore. He wants to play hide and seek. Mork says they have to do their lessons. At this point, I'm wondering why. Your child is at most a few weeks old. What is the hurry? I mean, maybe it's like a cram school mentality on Orc, but why do you have to do geography with your sort of preschooler? I can see, yeah, he's trying to turn it into a game, but don't force it. The kid is very young. Mearth wants to know where Metropolis is. Where does Superman live? So he's going to bring it back to his current obsession. Mork spins the globe and says, as the world turns, reference to that soap opera. He says, let's play hide and seek, because he would rather play hide and seek than discuss Superman anymore. Then he decides to combine the two, geography with hide and seek. He'll be Russia, and Mearth can play a small third world country, and Mork will have to find and dominate him through military and economic aid. I took that joke more as a political mockery of Russia rather than racist, so that's fine. They both stand. Mearth has Mork promise to keep his eyes closed. Mork puts his head down, kind of like Orkin's sitting, and the subtitles say that he counts in Orkin, but it actually sounded like it was mock Russian, because I thought I heard him say Brezhnev, for one thing. And we know that Robin Williams could do a very convincing Russian accent, like in Moscow on the Hudson, which came out later in the 80s. Mearth creeps across the living room and opens the armoire. He gasps at the sight of Mork's spacesuit. He takes it down and says, Dad.
Daddy, what's this?
Well, that's my space. Oh, well, what do you think it is, son?
Well, it's the most attractive costume I've ever seen. Look at this, how beautiful. And this, whatever it is, this diamond pointing down toward the man's shoes. Gosh, and look at this on the back at the same time, pointing down to his shoes in the back. It's incredible. Are you trying to tell me that this doesn't belong to a superhero?
Oh, well, let's not jump to any conclusions, son. Maybe someone sang with the Commodores. You don't know.
Please. Come on, Dad. You can level with me. I mean, you know, I'm not Lois Lane or anything like that. I'm your son, Mearth. Come on. Tell me the truth.
All right, son. Well, I'll level with you. The truth is, this is mine. I'm not now. I never have been a superhero.
Oh, gee. Not another major depression. I've had 4 today.
Well, son, wait a minute. Doesn't mean that I can't be a superhero. I mean, it's a perfect job for me. I mean, I can be my own boss. The hours are perfect. How does this sound to you, son? How about this? Mork McConnell, crime fighter. Does that make you proud?
Sure does.
Oh, well, son, that's what I've been waiting to hear. Then you got it.
Wait a minute. Could I go out there and battle evil with you?
Oh, all right, son. But if you see any criminals from the Phantom Zone or any large farmers from the Central Time Zone, you just find someplace safe and watch your daddy swing into action.
Dad, I'm so proud to be able to serve with you.
Oh, son, don't you worry about a thing. I'm just going to go back there and change into my superhero costume.
Dad.
Don't you worry about a thing.
Dad?
It's a little cold outside, son. Do you think it would tarnish my image if I wore Mommy's muff?
I wouldn't wear the muff. I really wouldn't wear the muff, though. You're still my hero, but don't wear the muff, okay?
Mearth says that this is the most attractive costume he's ever seen, so he doesn't see it as real clothing. Definitely not a uniform. Mork has those triangles on the uniform, but Mearth refers to them as diamonds. But hey, if he's a preschooler, that's understandable. He doesn't know all his shapes. And I felt like it was kind of teasing the censor when he says that the triangles point at the man's shoes. The point is pointing at something closer. You can see that Robin Williams is clearly trying not to laugh. So that's why I figured it was naughty, because Robin picked up on that. And there's a reference to Lionel Richie's band, the Commodores, who were known for wearing very shiny costumes. Of course, there's a reference to Lois Lane because she was not in on Superman's secret, and Mearth feels that he can be trusted with his dad's secret about being a superhero. And not only is Mork having some mood swings, but Mearth claims that he's gone through 4 major depressions in one day. Mork refers to himself as Mork McConnell, so again, the thing of he is taken Mindy's last name, partly because of sex role reversals, and also I think just because Mork doesn't have a last name and they want the whole family to share a last name. And we know that Mearth is Mearth McConnell. The Phantom Zone, it looks like, was, sorry I'm not up on all the Superman lore, but the Phantom Zone was used on the planet Krypton as a humane method of imprisoning criminals. And Mork also refers to the Central Time Zone, a Midwest joke, because he mentions farmers. And then we again have Robin and Jonathan teasing the censors, trying not to crack each other up, but barely holding it together this time. My guess is that Robin was about to exit to the bedroom with the spacesuit. His eye fell on the muff. I don't know why it was there. He decided to bring it in, and of course muff has a slang meaning to a part of female anatomy, and so both Robin and Jonathan are thinking about that when he talks about Mommy's muff. That whole part felt ad-libbed. There's a certain spontaneity and naughtiness to this. Then we get a daytime exterior of what I guess is supposed to be a sleazy bar. Then we see the interior of the sleazy bar. There's green brick, but there's also kind of a black and maroon decor. The floors are messy. The jukebox is playing what sounds to me like a knockoff of the Barney Miller theme, like it's kind of brassy and kind of thing, but not quite, but kind of in that genre, if that were a genre. I don't know if that was a music rights substitution. I don't know what it sounded like on the original. There's only one woman in the place, and she's wearing a tight leopard print dress. And I didn't know if she was supposed to be a prostitute or she's just there to pick up men, but we see her smiling at and interacting with men throughout the scene, and then I think she ends up with a guy in a cowboy hat. Things going on with the extras, I didn't pay a lot of attention, but it kind of adds to the atmosphere. A fist fight breaks out. One man collides into the jukebox, but it keeps playing, and then he lands at the front door and he seems to be unconscious. Mork is now in his Orkin uniform, and he's got a black cape, kind of like the kind that Zerko had. Mork tells his son that you're never too old for nap time, because that's how he excuses the man that they have to step over to enter the room. Mork says they'll get a quick cold drink and be on their way. Why he's taking his young son to a bar, I don't know. This is just Mork. Mearth has his doubts because they've been walking around for 2 days and they haven't seen one decent crime. 2 days have passed since the previous scene. He says Superman flies. It's a bummer that they have to ride the bus. Mork says Superman can't make exact change like they do. Like that's the only reason he doesn't take the bus. They approach the bar. There's only one person sitting at the bar, and it's a black man who's wearing denim, plaid, and a baseball cap. He's got a beer. The bartender is a large, white-haired white man with a bar apron and his hand on his hip. The bartender asks, "What in the hell are you?" Mork says they're two ordinary people willing to take a fashion risk because, of course, not only is Mork in his uniform, but Mearth is in overalls, as he usually is. He says they'd like 2 milks, please. Leche, por favor. And then he chuckles. There's a cut to the bartender looking disapproving. Mearth says, incidentally, so again, polysyllabic, "Could I have a glass with Fred Flintstone on it?" So he's still a child, and yes, he watches a lot of TV like his father. The bartender says, "I think we had some milk around here once. I'll check to see if it's still liquid." Mork tells Mearth that this is the kind of place where they might find a man who will violate law in the American way. So maybe that's why he took his child there? Mearth says, "Oh, Dad, God bless you. You sound just like Steve Garvey." We may have had a reference to Steve Garvey before. I was a Southern Californian. I knew that he played for the Dodgers, and that was from 1969 to 82, and then he joined the San Diego Padres in 83. But I didn't get why he specifically was associated with the American way. The bartender sets down 2 glasses of milk, so he obviously found the milk pretty quickly, and asks what's with them. What are they anyway? Mork says he's Mork McConnell, crime fighter and a part-time superhero. The bartender asks if Mearth is Wonder Woman. This is meant to be an insult that he mentions a female superhero. Mearth says he happens to be Mearth, Mork's important sidekick. Bartender says, "Just give me a straight answer. A simple straight answer before somebody here hands you your kneecaps on a platter." It's one of those things of the stereotypical bartender doesn't want to deal with the kooks like you see this in It's a Wonderful Life. And it's not clear if he's threatening them or he's warning them that he runs the kind of bar where they will be handed their kneecaps on a platter. The black man says, "Come on, Dave. It ain't worth it." He tells Mork, "You guys don't belong here. You could get hurt." It could be that he's threatening them, but it also could be that he's protecting them. He tells them to take a hike. He says there's a bar down the street that caters to superheroes. Mork says he can't go there. He's not union. The black man moves away. Mork confidentially tells his son that there's a lot of tension here. Let's check out the jukebox and see if they have the love theme from Alien. And of course, Alien was a sci-fi movie that has been referred to at least once before and was not at all romantic, but I guess Mork thinks that that would ease the tension in the bar. They go across the room. By now, the unconscious man has been revived, and he's sitting at the table with the guy who revived him and the guy who punched him out. So that's what I mean about these little backstories going on. Another man enters, and he's wearing jeans, plaid, and an open brown jacket. He goes to the bar and says, "Hey, Dave, how you doing?" Confirmation that the bartender's name is Dave. Bartender says, "Charlie, how are you?" Charlie says, "All right, how about a beer?" Dave warns him, "I don't think I'd be hanging around here. There have been some people asking questions about you." Charlie says, "Don't worry about me. Nobody finds me unless I want to find them." There are 3 guest stars on the episode, and I'll talk about them more in a bit, but the characters' names are Dave, Charlie, and Gus. So the black guy is Gus. Gus pulls out a gun, stands, and points it at Charlie. He says, "Wrong again, Charlie." He says, "We figured you'd show up sooner or later." And at this point, we don't know who he's including in we. Charlie chuckles as if he's not worried. Mearth says, "Daddy, he's got a gun. Do something." Mork says, "You're right, son." And Mearth again insists that Mork do something.
Hold it right there! How about you just dropping that gun before I hand you my kneecaps on a platter?
Hey! Thank you, partner.
Oh, no sweat. Will someone now call a policeman?
I'm a policeman. Oh, there's going to be a black mark on your record, Dad, if you do this.
Looks like I'm gonna have to split town again, but I'm a little short on cash. So, Dave, you empty the till, and everybody else, you empty your pockets.
Well, I don't have any pockets.
Good. Then you get to collect all the cash.
Oh, my pleasure, sir. Lovely 7 3/4. Your donations are greatly appreciated.
Dad, I plead with you. Don't do this. That cap is filthy. You don't know where it's been. And besides, the money you're taking from these guys, I'm sure they're busted.
Son, now, please, son, please. Now, that's a criminal over there with a gun, and the Surgeon General has determined that bullets can be hazardous to your health. Now, please. I'm not Superman, thank you very much. And even if I was, I wouldn't want to see you hurt or any of these people hurt either. Now, son, please, I'm not a coward.
Hey, who said you could move?
He was just helping me, that's all.
Shut up. I told you, empty the pocket.
All I have is a frog in my right pocket.
Oh, please, he's telling you the truth, Charlie. Oh, I'm a nonviolent person. Here, take your money and go and leave us all alone.
Hey, I happen to be a violent person, so shut up. I told you, empty the pocket.
Hey, stop that! I'm warning you.
I want those pockets turned inside out. What do you got to hide?
Nobody hurts my family.
Who's doing this? What the hell's going on here?
Daddy, what happened?
I don't know, son. I just hope it never happens again. Come on, you're safe now. Let's go home.
You know something? They said Chicago was the windy city.
So we find out that Gus is actually a cop and Mork has made things worse, which is pretty predictable. There's a callback to the kneecaps on a platter. We see that Mork is trying to protect his son, who's just trying to understand the situation. Mork insists that he's not a coward, and we know that it used to be that Mork didn't mind being thought of as a coward, but now he's been on Earth for a while. His concepts about bravery and cowardice have changed from the Orkin tradition. The audience says, "Aw," when Mearth gets hurt, like he really is a child being abused. And there's a callback to that poor frog who apparently has been traveling around in Mearth's pocket all week. Mork says he's a non-violent person, and so that's a reminder that although he is trying to be a superhero, he doesn't believe in violence. And of course, Charlie does. Mork experiences rage at his family being hurt. Although he tries not to be violent, now that he's a family man, he sees things differently. We, of course, get some special effects. The audience doesn't react to that, so maybe wonder if some of this at least was not filmed in front of a studio audience, or maybe some things were added later. There's a calendar on the wall that has Sunday the 1st and Monday the 30th, and that actually does match up to November 1981, which, believe me, in years of observing calendars on sitcoms, this rarely happens. Sometimes you get a month that doesn't make any sense for that calendar year at all. Mearth refers to Chicago being the Windy City, so even though he's very young, he knows that. And we see Gus capture Charlie with some help from the others in the bar. So we know that although Mork interfered, things worked out okay. There's a wavy dissolve back to the present. Mork and Mindy are sitting on the couch holding hands. Mork says the newspaper reported that a freak tornado touched down in a small bar. That's how they got out of that. I don't know when that was reported, and again, there's some timeline question. Mork says it was really scary. He didn't know he had that kind of rage inside of him. So it's not just that he was in a difficult situation with his child, but he is scared of himself and that rage inside him. He says he's afraid of what'll happen the next time he opens a pistachio and there's no nut. Just an empty shell, ending on a joke about food. Mindy says he was protecting Mearth. Mork says he only wanted Mearth's respect and he put him in a dangerous situation. So at least he recognizes that. In some ways, Mork has grown up this season. Mearth starts slowly descending the stairs. Mindy says Mork did take it too far, but it's normal to want respect from Mearth. As always, she is the level-headed one. She takes his hand again, but then lets go when she sees Mearth standing behind the couch. Mearth says, "Daddy, I have so much respect for you." Mindy says she missed Mearth. She's been gone for 2 days. That makes no sense. They were going through the streets looking for crime for 2 days, and then there would have to have been time for the newspaper report, and again, I don't know when she left the original date. Like, if she'd been gone for 4 days, that would have made more sense. She and Mork go to Mearth, and she hugs Mearth. He tells her that while she was gone, Daddy was so brave. She says she heard. Mearth says Daddy took a gun away from a criminal. He did. And he didn't even muss his hair during the tornado. He has better luck with his hair than Dewey Fishbeck. And Mork says, I guess I owe it all to Ann Miller's hairspray. And that's a reference to the dancer Ann Miller. I guess she had kind of like helmet head, like a lot of hairspray. I don't remember her too well, but that's kind of my visual image of her. Mearth says, Daddy, you're so great. Mindy says, see, Mork, you've been searching for something you had all along. long, which is debatable because it seems like Mearth didn't respect him until he saw how brave he was in the bar. And even then, there were moments where he wasn't respecting them. So it didn't make much sense, but it's a nice wrap up. Mork says, "You really mean it, son?" Mearth says, "Of course I do. You're everything to me. You play with me, you read to me, we watch TV together." And we've seen some of this. "We're together all day long." And Mindy beams. Mork asks, "What about Superman?" Mearth says, "He's a joke. He doesn't mean anything to me. He's a fake. He's fictitious." Taking his arm, Mindy says, "Mearth, why don't you tell Daddy who your new hero is?" Because she assumes that he's going to say that now his new hero is Mork. This is a little bit like the episode with Corey Feldman ending up admiring Mork instead of Billy the Kid. Mork modestly says that Mearth doesn't have to say it. Mearth says, "I will. It's the governor." Of course, his parents are surprised. And then Mearth says, "I got that from you, Dad. That's your sense of humor." And they all laugh. And of course, the irony is that Jonathan Winters influenced Robin Williams' sense of humor. And I'm sure Jonathan knew that. There's another nighttime exterior of the house with snow on the ground. Mork summons Orson, and then he hears a vacuum humming. Then we hear Robin Williams' Senor Wences voice saying, "Hola." Mork says, "Oh, excuse me, Ola," like Ola is her name. Mork thinks he's in the wrong mind. He's looking for Orson. Now, I thought that when Mork summons Orson, it's in his own mind, but maybe their minds are connecting. And I don't know if there's a joke in here about Orson having a dirty mind that needs to be cleaned. I think we have had a reference to his housekeeper before. She says, "Orson no en casa. This is his housekeeper, Keezbalita." Subtitles spell that as Keezbalita, but I wondered if it was supposed to be like a joke about cheese balls. Mork says, "Keezbalita, could you turn off the vacuum?" And then the vacuum powers down. Mork thanks her and says that's much better, but where's Orson? She again says he's no en casa. He says that he has a report for him. She says she can take a message. He says, "Oh, gracias," and says to tell him, please, that Mork called, and that this week he learned that fathers put too much pressure on themselves to be the apple of their child's eye. They should be concentrating on being loved for what they are, not what they think they should be. Then he asks if she got that. She says, "You bet. I tell Orson Monty called." And then she says, "Nanu." Mork says he worked 5 hours on a report and somebody named Monty gets all the credit. Well, patience, patience. He sings in Spanish and exits dancing a little. I had 2 thoughts on this. One, I can't believe he spends 5 hours on these reports where he's just learning the most obvious things, unless it involves celebrity impersonations or something that maybe he has to practice that. And 2, why did they have to add more gratuitous racism to this episode? The previous episode had Mork and Mindy sorting out their parental roles, and we got the switch to Mindy being mommy and Mork being daddy, and that's what we're sticking with, and that's what the title refers to, that Mork is the daddy that can't beat up anybody. And he doesn't beat up anybody, but he does successfully battle them in a bar and create a tornado. And like I said, this has these themes that have run throughout the series, and now that he has a son, there are these new pressures, and his son is growing up very quickly and is consuming mass media and is reacting to it, and Mork has to measure up to these different images of masculinity in the media, blah, 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 blah. Again, the episode is not as interesting as this may sound, even from an academic point of view. It's not terrible, but it approached filler. I gave the previous episode 2.5 eggs out of 4, and that measures how well it delivers what I'm looking for in the series, and that was a drop from the beginning of the season when it was going more in the focus of Mork and Mindy's engagement and then marriage. That, of course, is now taking a back seat to them becoming parents and trying to live up to their different views of fatherhood and motherhood and so on. So I was leaning towards a 2.5 again, but I did mark it down 1/4 of an egg for the gratuitous racism. I also give each of these episodes a rating on a 0 to 4 heart scale, which measures how well it supports and promotes the romantic relationship of Mork and Mindy. And yeah, they're married now, but that shouldn't mean that the romance is dead. I gave the previous episode a 1.5, which was definitely a drop from earlier in the season. I'm going to go with a 1.5 again. Like I said, it does mostly feel like a friendship, but there are little expressions of affection. She's certainly supportive of him. He does at times give her pet names, but we're not really getting much kissing. There's a bit of touching and hand holding, and she does say that she loves him. Like I said, with the shift towards them focusing on their child, there is less about them as a couple, and even when they have a scene in the bedroom, they're talking about their child. child. And if that's what they want to do with the series, fine, but that's not what I came here for. And even at the age of 13, it's like, how invested am I in Jonathan Winters as a kindergartner? So the 1.5 heart kind of impacts the egg rating as well. There were some funny moments. It is interesting to see Robin Williams grapple with the fame of one of his best friends and the impact that Superman had on the culture. I know that there will be an episode where Mearth knows that he's half alien because, spoiler, there's at least one episode set on Orc. But I don't know when that happens. I don't know if he's told off screen, but at some point in the season, they won't be keeping it away from him. And yeah, I can understand he's still very young or very old, depending on how you want to look at it, and he's just not ready for that revelation. The idea that his father is a superhero is big enough. Telling him he's an alien wouldn't necessarily help matters at this point. So maybe they just need to kind of get to a point where they're all more comfortable as a family before they spring something like that on him. Let's talk guest stars. Because we didn't get any in the previous episode. It was just all focused on the three of them, plus Exodore and Fred, and how they react to the new family. Dave the bartender was played by Hugh Gillen, who was then 55. He worked in movies and TV from 72 to 98 and died in 2004. I would most recognize him as Terry's dad on Three's Company, but in general he played somewhat of an authority figure or somebody kind of imposing, so the bartender kind of fits with that. Stanley Kamel played Charlie. He was then 37. He worked mostly in TV from 68 to 08 and in fact died in 2008. He also had a Three's Company role as a clean-cut man, so different kind of role than this hood who hangs out in the bar and seems to have no fear, even when a cop tries to arrest him, although I think the tornado throws him. Lee Weaver played Gus. He was then 50 years old and he's still alive. He's had quite a long and busy career, mostly on TV. He started out playing natives, I guess you would say, on Sheena, Queen of the Jungle in 1955 and continued paying his dues. He had 2 roles on The Cosby Show, and most recently he is credited as Older Guy, which he definitely is, being in his 90s now, in Planters Deluxe Mixed Nuts, A Delicious Debate, which is a 2022 video. He seems to have been a reliable, hardworking actor. None of them really stand out. They do what they're supposed to do. They're fine. They add to the episode, but it's not an episode I'm particularly interested in. Like I said, it's not exactly filler, but it's not really necessary. I could expand more on the various themes, but I just don't really care that much. 2 1/4 eggs, 1.5 hearts. This is Paula Scheffner with episode 75. My dad can't beat up anybody. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's a shark jump.